early access to Call of Duty's new Warzone map and all of the content coming to Warzone later this year. So today I wanted to give you guys my first opinions on not only Urzikstan, but all of the new content coming to Warzone, and what the goal and direction is for the Battle Royale heading into the later part of the year. Now, because of the setups that we were at, there were some things that I couldn't judge. For example, judging audio in a room with 200 other creators shouting and screaming isn't really fair on the game. Core mechanics and the real general design direction for what's happening for later this year was something that I felt I got a really good grasp of almost straight away. And honestly, I would say that the general feeling and consensus is that the team at Raven Software were really trying to inject a lot of fun into Warzone again. Not only do we have a map that seems to focus entirely on engagements, different flanking routes, and just creating dynamic moments that made maps like Verdansk special, but you also have really satisfying elements with some of the new ground loot, some of the new weapons and equipment, and some of the new perks as well. So first up, let's talk about the biggest component, which is obviously the map, the major piece of content that will be the forefront and focus of everything that you're going to have in Call of Duty Warzone. And Urzikstan, to me, feels like a very bold and deliberate design choice to make a smaller map, a more compact map, and a map that actually focuses more on the intensity of gameplay and the fluidity of gameplay, as opposed to focusing on dragging out a big battle royale game. Now, the developers did explicitly say that circle timings, circle sizes, and even the player count was subject to change in terms of making a game that feels fast, fun, and fluid, but at the same time, you could very clearly see that this map is about, in my opinion, 20 to 30% smaller than Al Mazrah. It's smaller than Verdansk. It's probably the smallest big map they've ever made, but it's not necessarily the least detailed, because every single point of interest and the connections between those points of interest feel very meticulously well made. Times during the Call of Duty Next livestream where I was almost just deeply impressed looking around at some of the points of interest and some of the buildings that they had made for this map. Not only were there a number of flanking routes, there were jump ups, ledge hangs, zip lines, horizontal zip lines, and things that had been so well thought out in terms of placement and in terms of mobility and moving around the map quickly and fluidly. Almost felt as though the teams who had designed this map and put it all together had really understood everything that had made previous maps not an enjoyable experience. Open spaces with just no useful cover, open spaces where you're just transitioning across empty rocks and hills, and things that just don't make for a good engaging experience and don't give you as a player an opportunity to fight back if you get caught in the open, has almost been completely ripped away from this map. There is always some form of cover, there is always some form of easy transition from A to B, whether that's a quick zip line or a vertical zip line, horizontal zip line, whatever it so happens to be, there are options. Detail really feels amplified when you're in those points of interest and when you're moving between them, because you really appreciate how much micro cover they've included, how many random sandbags and boxes and brick walls that they've thrown up in locations, and how areas that have been designed like palaces and military bases have been designed in such a way that it's going to cater to really good gunfights, really good flanking routes, and really intelligent gameplay as well. There were so many times during the gameplay that we had where I found a jump up where I had an opportunity to make a play on a team, or I found a rotation straight away that gave me opportunities to challenge another team as well. And there are just so many of these things, and so frequently do you see these things, that although this map is technically smaller than Al Mazrah and Verdansk, it doesn't feel less interesting or less important, because the density of the buildings and the complexity of what's been designed really steps up and makes the game feel compact and dense in a way that just makes sense, and in a way that feels like lessons learned from Al Mazrah and lessons learned from Verdansk. And sometimes it's not even the cool, really smart, well-designed details and flanking routes. It's something as simple as the fact that you can now reverse the train, put the train forward, or grind it to a halt, effectively creating a moving point of interest that you can almost weaponize as a team. it's just a small, silly little thing, but it's actually adding a whole nother layer of dynamicness to the gameplay, and situations that you would never have had previously in other maps, you would have in this map. Urzikstan so far, for me, gets really good marks. Again, I've only had a couple of hours, but the initial impressions are that this is a real solid 9 out of 10 map that has so much potential in terms of gameplay, pacing, and just action and fun that I really think it's a respectful admission that they're getting better and better at creating maps for Warzone. So the map feels great, and that's a good thing. But what is it like coupled with the Modern Warfare 3 movement? Because that's the big thing that really marries together Modern Warfare 3 and Warzone, getting rid of clunkiness, getting rid of slowness, and bringing back some features like stims that added a layer of fastness and speed to Warzone that has since been removed. I'm going to tell you that it's like Modern Warfare 2019 levels of speed, because it definitely isn't. There are some places where you still notice a little bit of slowdown in some animations, and some mantling animations, if it's too high, could be a little bit quicker, I think. But overall, it really felt like they took everything that was clunky, slow, and annoying about Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2, and basically went, why are we doing this? Let's fix it. Let's make this less of a problem. Reload cancelling, slide cancelling in a way that doesn't mess up tac sprint, and even just things like mantling over objects and being able to aim down sight fairly quickly seem like really small and insignificant changes, but when you combine them all together, they create a different level of motion and a different level of fluidity that feels really good. And in my opinion, isn't Modern Warfare 2019, it isn't Warzone 2 and Modern Warfare 2, but it's a nice middle ground between the two, where movement players can really capitalize, challenge other players, and actually win. But it doesn't offer busted elements like resetting tac sprint that would effectively give them a get out of jail free card for making a bad play. I feel like this is a really good middle ground, and it has really positive connotations for things like sniping, aim assist, and other gameplay elements, which we'll talk about shortly, that just seem to make the game elevate again to a much better point, where skillful players and players who take the time to get better at their gunfights and movement are actually rewarded for what they're doing, rather than being punished by clunky movement that benefits a high level of aim assist. I'm not going to get into certain details about the majority of gameplay mechanics until I have more time to play Warzone, but I will say two things stood out to me. One, the return of one-shot sniper rifles to the head, and two, aim assist. There seems to be some fairly significant changes here, although I'll need more time to verify. One-shot headshots are definitely back with sniper rifles, but I can't tell whether it's certain calibers of sniper or certain heavinesses of sniper, but the new-looking sniper that resembles a ZRG is most definitely a one-shot headshot. When it comes to aim assist, because the movement speed is so much greatly improved, I can't necessarily tell if aim assist has been nerfed, or if it's just the fact that because you can move faster, it's less effective. Either way, I would say that the stickiness of aim assist over extended ranges and medium ranges felt really reduced, which might be able to create a balanced middle ground finally between controller and keyboard and mouse. On the whole, I've got to say I was really impressed with my initial impression of this map. You have to bear in mind, we were on half-decent setups that weren't our own, and things weren't comfortable. We didn't have our own graphics settings, our own audio settings, and all the creature comforts that we would expect from the game. But yet, the game just felt good. It felt like it was in a natural space, and I felt like I had a lot of fun playing the new Warzone experience. In terms of concerns, I'd say I have two concerns, but I don't think they're big ones. One is the player count and the amount of circle movement and gas movement on the map. I feel like balancing player count and circle size and how quickly the gas collapses is a really important detail. But in the press briefing that we got from Raven Software, they themselves said that it was something that they're looking at going into this event, and it's something that isn't final. So they're already aware of that, which is really good. And the second one for me is just the minor details, the weapon balancing, the perk balancing, because in this event I didn't get enough time with it to really necessarily say if things were in a good spot or a bad spot, but I can at least say that it was in a fun spot so far. I got a little bit of flack on the internet and on Twitter for saying that Warzone is back, And honestly, it feels like it is. It's difficult to not be excited for a return to the mechanics that made Warzone Warzone, and more importantly, new content which actually seemingly makes a lot of sense. A better designed map, gameplay with guns that feels punchy, impactful, and has a consistent time to kill. I just hope that they can tie it all together by the time it releases later this year. So folks, that's it for my Warzone impressions. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you again in the next one.